As I'll ever be.
I'm Kat,
And I'm Taylor.
and welcome to Square Mile of Murder.
Yeah. I just want to take a moment to say, every time we record one of these, I feel like I'm lisping more and more.
I haven't noticed,
Okay, that's good.
but now I'm going to be like hyper aware.
Oh, good. Well, dear listeners, if you find me particularly lispy, let me know, because I keep noticing it, and it seems strange to me.
And on that note, anyone who decides to tell me that my accent is fucked up, getting crossed off my Christmas card list. I know.
Well,
Oh.
I mean, I'm impressed you even have, you're even sending people Christmas cards to begin with, because
It was a turn of phrase. I can't threaten to kill people on air.
No, that's probably not a good idea, especially considering what kind of podcast we are.
Yeah.
We're probably on some sort of watch list somewhere. Right, but so I've set a new record of taking us off track before we even introduce the case. I'm very proud of this accomplishment. I'd like to thank my family and my distractibility. So, yeah, we've got something a little bit different this week. Not your usual, concrete, well-defined single-person case. Instead, we have a theory about a series of cases that officially have been classified as accidental deaths, but a team of retired detectives believe that there's more to all these deaths than just them being tragic accidents.
Today we are going to the Midwest and the East Coast of the United States on the trail of the so-called Smiley Face Killers.
Mm-hmm.
Bad serial killer name.
Yeah. It's not the
But you'll
best.
find out soon why they're called that. But
Yes.
I think we should start giving serial killers really bad names, and then, nobody's gonna want to be caught, as the small dick killer of the East River.
I mean, well, I was trying to think of like really bad names as you said that. It was like the garbage can killer. But that actually sounds like it could be real. So
We've got off track again.
what a surprise. I'm shocked, really.
So quarantine and isolation are having some effects on us.
Oh my god, you have no idea.
We cannot process the same thought for longer than 5 seconds.
No. I cannot focus on anything anymore. I'm just like, oh, look, a shiny object over there. Oh, look, TV show over there.
Okay. No distractions. Let's go. Smiley Face Killers.
Okay. So I've put on my blinders for those of you who can't see. Just all of you. Unless we put some sort of video up on Patreon. The Smiley Face Killers is a theory that's put forward by retired New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, and Dr. Lee Gilbertson, who is a criminal justice professor at St. Cloud State University. The group alleges that a number of college-aged men found dead in bodies of water across several eastern and midwestern states from the late 1990s to present day didn't drown accidentally, which, is how law enforcement agencies have concluded they died, but instead were victims of a serial killer or possibly killers.
The groups conducted in-depth investigations into many of these deaths, studying how the water moves in these particular areas. For example, how the opening and closing of dams affects the flow of the river, tide tables from when the tide timetables from the time when the men went missing. This has led them to speculate about where the bodies actually entered the water, and they have found smiley face graffiti spray painted close to where they believe the bodies entered the water. Hence, Smiley Face Killers.
It all becomes clear. So Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte are both retired decorated detectives from the Bronx, each with more than 20 years experience in law enforcement. In the early 2000s, the pair began investigating what they believed to be suspicious drownings of young men in a number of Midwestern and Northeastern states. By 2008, they had found 45 deaths in 13 states that they believed to be linked.
Most of the victims fit into the profile of a white, college-age man who was successful, popular, and athletic student. They were last seen leaving bars or parties. They also believe they were murdered either by a single serial killer who has travelled extensively across 13 states or by an organised group of killers spread out across these states.
Gannon and Duarte have found opposition and support across the board, from law enforcement and criminologists to true crime fans and armchair experts. The pair eventually began writing to various Congress members and other representatives across the 13 states where they believe crimes had taken place, asking them to reopen the cases and investigate them as homicides. In 2008, they gained support from Congressman Sam Graves of the 6th District of Missouri, who wrote to then FBI Director Robert Mueller asking him to investigate the case. How topical that good old Bobby Mueller pops up in an episode.
However, the FBI do not share the detectives' enthusiasm for the theory, and in April 2008 released the following statement regarding what they call the Midwest River? The Midwest River deaths.
Put on your best FBI voice.
No. The FBI has reviewed information about the victims provided by 2 retired police detectives who have dubbed these incidents the Smiley Face murders, and interviewed an individual who provided information to the detectives. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths or any evidence substantiating the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer or killers. The vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related drownings. The FBI will continue to work with the local police in the affected areas to provide support as requested.
Well,
That's
there you go.
Pretty closed door there from Robert Mueller and co.
Mueller and his G-men. Yeah, that's kind of like, we've heard your theory, and we refuse to dignify it with a response.
Yeah, so they are essentially still trying to prove a theory that has been debunked by the FBI, essentially.
Or at least rebuked by the FBI.
Yeah, rebuked, not debunked. But
said,
this is what we're up against, people.
We don't believe you, sirs. Next. So, criminal profiler Pat Brown has called the theory ludicrous, arguing that the evidence does not fit what is known about serial killers. She also believes that the smiley face images are likely nothing more than coincidences based upon guesses as to where the bodies entered the water. Smiley face graffiti was only found after a wide area search, not immediately next to where the bodies are suspected to have entered the water.
There's also been a lot of opposition within law enforcement who completely reject the idea of a serial killer or killers killing young men and disposing of them in large bodies of water. Obviously, a large amount of criticism for the theory does come from the precincts and departments who investigate the deaths.
Makes sense.
But, none of us likes having our work criticised, do we? Especially if we've done our best, and even more so when we haven't.
I mean, yes.
If you haven't done your job properly and just been a bit lazy, you don't want someone pointing that out. If you didn't want to do it in the first place, you're not going to want to do it again under a microscope.
Well, that's definitely true.
So whether it is people who've just done their best and not come to a conclusion that these guys came to, or whether it is just lazy police departments being like, they were drunk, they fell in the river, End of story. You know, police budgets everywhere are overstretched.
Yeah.
So, you know, it could be either.
Yeah. However, they have found support from other members in law enforcement and criminology sectors. In March 2009, Lee Gilbertson, who's a member of the criminal justice faculty at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota, voiced his support for the theory on an episode of Larry King Live, during which the alleged murders were discussed. And Gilbertson has since joined the two detectives and helps them investigate these deaths, which they believe fit the theory.
And also, Dr. Lee Gilbertson is one of the USA's leading experts on criminal gang culture, I believe, and an editor of like a journal, like academic journal on gang culture and crime. So these are
pretty well regarded guy.
Yeah, this isn't crackpots with tin foil hats.
Yeah.
It's people who actually know what they're talking about, which makes it more interesting. In early 2019, the theory was the subject of a 6-part docuseries on Oxygen TV called The Smiley Face Killers Hunt for Justice. The trio are joined by Mickey Donovan, who is a retired NYPD detective and was also a first responder at the World Trade Center on 9/11. Each episode focuses on a different victim, explaining how the case was originally investigated, how the group have since reinvestigated it, and why they believe they're a victim of the Smiley Face Killer or killers.
Now, the theory has also been the subject of, should we call it a questionable feature-length documentary, which you can see on YouTube if you so desire.
But we wouldn't recommend wasting 1 hour and 20 minutes of your life doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think questionable is the right word. I don't think there's a word strong enough.
Yeah. So if you're looking for what to avoid when researching this case, there's a feature-length film on YouTube put out by New Dawn Films called The Smiley Face Killers, and it was released in 2014. But we would recommend that you don't waste your time like I did this morning and watch the entire thing.
After somebody sent me the link saying, I couldn't stand watching the TV show, so I watched this documentary. Here's the link.
Well, I was duped. Yeah, so watched the whole thing. Turns out it's more mock than doc. Seems kind of like bullshit all around, and consensus online seems to be that it's sort of a fictionalized approach to this case to sort of grasp onto the publicity and make waves and all that kind of stuff. So
the thing that annoys me is they've actually interviewed the families of real victims and real investigators and people who've worked on this case.
So don't watch that one if you're searching for things about this case. Go find the TV show. Although, we'll talk about our own sort of opinions on this theory and how it's presented in the show later. But I have my issues with it, to say the least.
Now, as of 2019, when the series first aired, the group had identified more than 350 young men whose deaths fit the Smiley Face Killer theory. But because this is a theory rather than an actual case, there are so many potential victims. So we're just going to focus on a few whose cases are explored in depth in the TV show to try and illustrate the theory as best we can.
Yeah. Because we're not, we can barely get through these, first 3 pages. We're not sitting through 350 cases today.
We do not have. Well, they're saying now social distancing could have to like last until next year, so we might actually have time.
I'd have time.
But
Well,
I do not have the brain
patience.
cell capacity.
Yeah, that too. No, me neither. So, first of our case studies is 23-year-old Dakota James, who went missing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in January of 2017. He had been out for the night with friends in downtown Pittsburgh, but disappeared after leaving a bar on Liberty Avenue. Everyone assumed he had headed home to the north side of the city, and CCTV footage showed him heading through the city's cultural district. And this footage was the last known images of Dakota.
Dakota's family were from Maryland, and he was living in Pittsburgh while he was a master's student at Duquesne University. Dakota was openly gay, and whilst his parents worried that his openness about his sexuality could make him a target, he never suffered any serious homophobic treatment, and was generally well liked, quite a popular guy. And he was also quite athletic and had been a competitive swimmer at school.
So, despite not being seen or heard from again after leaving the bar that night, there were some purchases made using Dakota's PayPal account in the days after his disappearance. But police never really followed this up.
Dakota's body was found 40 days later, floating in the Ohio River, approximately 10 miles away from where he was last seen. Police theorized that while walking home, Dakota had crossed the road to the banks of the Allegheny River to take a piss in the river because, that's what drunk men do. So, police believed that in his intoxicated state, Dakota had lost his balance, fallen face first into the river, and drowned. His death was recorded as an accidental drowning, and crucially, it was only ever investigated as a by the Missing Persons Department. So it's never kicked up to homicide. It's never investigated as anything more. It's missing person, turns up dead, end of story. But that would be a very, very short and boring episode.
So, many of his friends and family and the detectives behind the Smiley Face Killer theory have disputed the official version of events. Because Dakota had previously been a competitive swimmer, his friends and family don't believe that he would have drowned necessarily if he had fallen into the river, and that they think that he would have been able to get himself out.
But it doesn't matter how strong a swimmer you are, anyone can get into difficulty in the water.
Yeah.
Firstly, it's January, so it'd been very, very cold.
Especially
no one's lasting very long in the water. I mean, it's Pittsburgh, and I don't know Pittsburgh, but we do have a friend who grew up in Pittsburgh, Madeline, who's probably not listening. And I know she says it was very, the Northeast is cold.
I mean, yeah.
So you know that.
Yes.
So,
you don't go in the water in the winter if you don't want to die.
Yeah. So, it's very cold for a start. He had been drinking, even though he wasn't drunk. So, even, a couple of pints, couple of shots, whatever, that is going to impair your judgment and slow down your body's thought processes. So, it is going to make it more difficult for you to get out.
Yeah. And
if he'd fallen, he could have banged his head as well, which would have, either knocked him out or at least disorientated him, and would have struggled to get himself out again.
Yeah, and plus, when you jump into really cold water or fall into really cold water, sometimes your body just goes into shock and just stops.
Yeah, I never actually thought of that.
Yeah,
being
for lack of a better phrase, it freezes, or it's just sort of sensory overload, so he may not have even been able to attempt to swim out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
if this was the only questionable aspect of Dakota's case, you could brush it off as grieving loved ones wanting someone or something to blame. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, according to our investigative team.
Yes, of course. Dakota's body was spotted by members of the public and recovered by water recovery personnel. When they were interviewed by detectives Gannon and Duarte, these personnel said that Dakota's face was almost the same. Like, it looked almost the same as it did in the CCTV footage, despite the fact that he had supposedly been dead and in the water for 40 days and had traveled 10 miles from the Allegheny River to the Ohio River. The water recovery personnel say that because of the geography of the river, it was very unlikely that Dakota's body could have been floating for any period of time without being seen. And they also said that of the hundreds of bodies they had recovered between them, Dakota was in the best shape.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, the CCTV was, captured him after he left the bar. So for his face to be in the same state
After being in the water for over a month.
40 days, that's something's not right.
Yeah, that doesn't add up.
Yeah, and not only did he supposedly travel 10 miles downriver, he'd fallen into the water in Pittsburgh. So he would have had to travel through a dam and through the confluence of the two rivers to make it from the Allegheny River to the Ohio River.
Mm-hmm.
Yet despite this, his body was in almost pristine condition, as described by the water recovery personnel. So he also showed virtually no decomposition, and the state of his body was actually more consistent with someone who had been dead for less than 24 hours, as opposed to 40 days.
It just doesn't track. Like, what about the other 39 days?
Well, that's $1 million question. Pathologist Dr. Wecht, who reviewed the case for the TV show, did say that it is possible for a body to be preserved in freezing cold water, but it is unlikely, and even if the body could have been preserved in the water and not begun to decompose, he would or he should still have sustained some injuries travelling the 10 miles along the rivers and through the dam.
Yeah,
so
you would think.
It is a possibility, but very unlikely, according to the pathologist.
Yeah. So to add even more suspicion on top of all of this, once his body was recovered, police refused to allow Dakota's parents to view the body. And it wasn't until after Dakota's funeral that his mother learned she had a legal right to see her son's body. And
I didn't know that relatives actually had that legal right.
I mean, I think it makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense.
No, but like, it's not really something I've ever considered.
No. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but, suspicious deaths like that where the body isn't, or, where the body's severely decomposed or severely mutilated or injured in some way, I didn't know. I've heard of police departments trying to stop the family seeing the body for their own state of mind, so to speak. I didn't know if it was illegal, that it was a legal right of the family to see the body.
Yeah. Dakota's mother has since said that she was in a state of shock and just sort of numb. Otherwise, she would have pushed to see her son one last time. And the nearest they came to viewing his body was when they were shown his ankle, and they formally identified him from the tattoo on his ankle and foot.
Because of the body's condition, the Smiley Face Killer team investigators have theorized that Dakota had been placed into the water past the dam and only hours before the body was spotted by members of the public. Like I say, due to the condition, level of decomposition, and they identified where they believe the body entered the water. And in this area, they also found smiley face graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
Now, This could have just been our old friend, police incompetence and laziness, and frankly, I think there is a bit of that there. But there is also more to it because this is pretty much just the blueprint for over 300 murders across 13 states in the Midwest and East Coast.
Yeah. So if we go back 9 years earlier in January 2008, at the other end of Pennsylvania, 24-year-old Tommy Booth disappeared from a bar in Woodland near Philadelphia and was found 2 weeks later in the creek behind the bar that he had been in with his friends. On the rear outside wall of the bar, next to where Tommy's body was found, can we guess what might have been spray painted there?
Could it have been a smiley face by chance?
We have a winner! Smiley face graffiti was found next to the body. However, this area of the creek had already been searched in the days following Tommy's disappearance, and no trace of him had been found. The creek had been frozen, but his body would have been visible had it been there during this search. And not only that, but Tommy's body was in full rigor mortis when he was found, meaning that he had been dead for 24 to 36 hours. So police once again classed it as an accidental death and closed the case.
As with the case of Dakota James, Tommy Booth's body was in very good condition, and he had been in the water behind the bar for 2 weeks, supposedly. Had he actually been there, he would have been in a much more advanced stage of decomposition.
Yeah.
And this has led investigators, as well as Tommy's friends and family, to suspect foul play. And the consulting pathologist on the TV show, Dr. Wecht, concluded that Tommy's death was, quote, highly suspicious of foul play, unquote.
Now, unlike Dakota James's case, there was no CCTV footage showing Tommy leaving the bar that night. Police who originally investigated his missing persons case theorized that he had gotten drunk, wandered out behind the bar, and fell into the creek and drowned. But our team of investigators believe that he was drugged and kidnapped and kept prisoner for almost 2 weeks before being murdered and dumped in the creek.
So this reminds me of, have you seen the meme that's doing the rounds in like loads of true crime groups? That's like, if you murder someone, hide the body somewhere temporarily, then anonymously tell the police that there's a body in location A.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go and dig up location A. Then you can go back at night and bury the body. Nobody will be suspicious about the disturbed earth because police have already searched. And so you can just hide the body. This kind of reminds me of that because the creek out of the back of the bar would have been one of the first places that was searched.
Yeah.
Probably before he was even reported missing because, you know, okay, he didn't come home. Okay, let's just go and look around the area. Maybe he got drunk and passed out or worse, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, like his friends would have just, we were in this bar, let's go look out in the alleyway kind of thing.
So to dump the body there almost seems like they didn't expect him to be found for a while because it would have already been searched.
Yeah.
So
I know.
You know.
It's strange to me that like his body wasn't there when it was initially searched. It's definitely interesting. So by all accounts, Tommy had been popular and well liked, and at the time of his death, he was fairly athletic and in good shape. So he fits the victim profile just like Dakota James does. But it's not just Pennsylvania where the investigators have identified the victims of these so-called smiley face killers. Victims have been found in Massachusetts, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, New Hampshire, Indiana, Ohio, New York, Delaware, Iowa, West Virginia, and Wisconsin.
Try saying that fast.
No thanks.
So another case which is explored in the show, which personally I found quite interesting, was the death of Todd Gabe in Muskegon, Michigan. 22-year-old Todd had been attending an orchard party on June 25th, 2005, when he disappeared. His body was found 22 days later floating in a nearby private lake. Firstly, an orchard party? What is that? It sounds like you would know about that.
I don't, because I didn't attend parties because I was not cool. But so I don't know from personal, firsthand experience. Have you ever listened to the podcast Up and Vanished?
No.
Well, in that case, it's a true crime podcast. There's a very prominent pecan orchard that figures into it, and like apparently all the local teens and young adults would just like have parties there every Friday night. So
is it like the inland equivalent of a beach party?
yeah, I think like a bonfire situation where you go and you know, hang out in the orchard because it's this big plot of land, in theory, away from a lot of other, you know, houses or whatever, town buildings and stuff. So
okay,
that's what I reckon.
Okay, I have now added Up and Vanished too.
Yes, it's a good
list of podcasts.
There's a lot of episodes, but it's good.
But yeah, so now we all have an understanding what an orchard party is. I find this interesting because it's a private lake. It's not like he fell. It's not like you're walking home by the river and you trip and fall.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So Todd's death was ruled an undetermined drowning, with the police theorising that he had left the party, drunk and high, wandered the wrong way, found himself at the lake, and at some point fallen in and drowned. But while post-mortem blood tests did show a combination of alcohol and multiple antidepressants in Todd's system, he wasn't actually taking any medication at the time. And when Detective Gannon and Dr. Gilbertson consult with a pharmacist, they learned that the combination of antidepressants found in Todd's system would not have been prescribed together, as they would act on each other and cause confusion, agitation, and hallucinations. And the consultant pharmacist, David McDermott, does point out that the drugs could easily have been slipped into a drink unnoticed, but he claims that the levels of medication and alcohol found in Todd's system would render him completely incapacitated and unable to walk through the woods to the lake. And this is your no eating warning.
Oh, God.
Stop eating if you are. So the group even go so far as consulting a local university and experimenting with a pig carcass, because pigs are the nearest animals to the whose body is like structurally the same as the human body in terms of muscle and fat distribution. And they place a dead pig, in the lake, same type of clothing that Todd was wearing, check on it every few days until it's been in the water for 22 days, and they compare the decomposition of the pig to the level of decomposition seen in Todd's body. Now, obviously, that is not an exact science in terms of comparison between a pig body and a human body, but does show just how far they're willing to go to look into this theory.
Yeah.
And on a nearby tree was a smiley face.
Of course.
And when the show was released last year, the family were still waiting for an answer as to whether or not Todd's case would be reopened and reinvestigated. So that is one I find interesting, especially because it's a private lake as well. It's surrounded by woodland. You wouldn't wander off there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Like, see, I'm inclined to believe the sort of concept that, like, he was, you know, drunk. He was highly intoxicated and ended up somehow in the lake accidentally, whether under his own power or someone else.
Yeah, I mean, depends. I mean, they did say that amount of drugs in his system would completely incapacitate him.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's hanging me up.
So he could have been, but sometimes we have a different idea of what incapacitated means. Like, I have a friend who you give a couple of glasses of wine is completely on her ass.
Yeah.
It's not completely incapacitated because we can pick her up and carry her home. But she is no use to anyone.
Now, why are you referring to me like this?
Whereas, you know, in pharmaceutical terms, when you're talking about incapacitated, it could mean like that, where you're not really comprehending what's going on around you, or it could also mean that you are just completely out of it.
Yeah.
Like on the floor, out.
Yeah, like not walking, not ambulatory.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask if there was a case that stood out to you, but you gave up with the TV show. So tell us about it.
Listen, I watched a few episodes. I watched the first few episodes. During the first episode, I started to struggle. Like, here's the thing. Maybe you've seen this other show. I can't remember what it was called. It's called like The Case of Jonbenet Ramsey or something. Came out a few years ago from the team behind Real Crime Profile. Yeah. So if anyone has seen this other like documentary series, it kind of reminded me of that. Like it's super overproduced. Like just the dramatic music is just go nonstop, like from the very first credit sequence on till the very end of the episode, and everything is like a dun 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 reveal, and like you're just waiting for like the commercial breaks to come in, even though I wasn't watching it on something that had commercials, and like to keep you guessing. And like the interviews with these guys, these retired NYPD detectives, like it just felt so scripted is maybe not the right word, but just sort of like it's all so repetitive. It's like, well, he was found in the water, so of course that means he fits our case, and like it just sort of every bit of it that they talk about, it's all very like confirmation biasy to me, where
definitely
it's like, well, we've come up with this theory and we're here promoting it, and so anything we talk about, it supports this theory. There are no other options.
I mean, I know we talked about it earlier on that this theory has been rebuked by the FBI, so they are really pushing hard to sell it. So I could deal with that aspect of it, but
see,
I do also agree with what you're saying.
My thing is that like it felt way less like they were trying to sell it to law enforcement than they were trying to sell it for entertainment value, which I understand.
Yeah.
Like, especially in our current media moment, like true crime sells like hotcakes. And
why are we still poor?
Yeah, right. How does that work out? But like, so that makes sense, but I don't know. It just, especially bringing in the family members of some of these victims for the show, and like it felt kind of gross to me in a way. Like some of these kids died, 10 plus years ago, and you're bringing in these families who have gone through this grieving process and been told like their kids died accidentally, and now you're putting them on TV and you're being like, yeah, well, actually, we can tell you what really happened after your child tragically died. Like, it just seems manipulative in a lot of ways to me. Like, look, I watch all kinds of TV. I don't have high standards. And like, I don't know, something about this, I was just like, nah, this isn't good. This isn't right. Like, I don't believe it. I don't buy it.
See, I didn't have that kind of reaction to it, but I'm trying to think of other true crime shows that I've turned off because I've been like, nope, for that kind of reason. And there are some I've just forgotten.
Yeah.
But no, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And like, in terms of the theory itself, I don't see all these, red yarn lines tying these cases together that they do necessarily. Like, I think they seem like accidental drownings for the most part, or they seem like body dumps. Like, these kids have been murdered or killed in some capacity, whether, on a night out. One of the cases that I did get through the entire episode, it was like, oh, he had contusions on his face. And they were like, oh, that's consistent with
the boot print.
With the boot print or something like that. But it's like, or he could have gotten kicked in the face in a fight and then died, and that like someone freaked out and panicked and like.
Am I right in thinking that, like shoe imprint, that's classed as junk science?
Yeah,
now,
it is.
Isn't it?
That's one of the things that's been totally debunked, I think.
Yeah. I mean, when you watch it on Forensic Files and you look at how they do it, it's really interesting, and I'm sure that they believe in what they're doing. But when you're you're essentially grasping at straws if you're going to be using junk science to prove your point.
Yeah, it's not it's not very promising for your theory. Yeah, and like the whole smiley face of it all, I just no. Like, if they were finding smiley faces on the bodies or right next to the bodies, or something like that, or there was some communication between killers and law enforcement or the media talking about smiley faces or whatever, maybe
that's what kind of. That's the bit where I go, no.
Yeah.
Is the smiley faces, because like you say, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you look at the pictures of the smiley faces that are found next to near these bodies are.
Well, that's the thing. They're not even near the bodies. They're near where they think the bodies went into the water, which is also totally bullshit. Like, I don't care if you're, recreating the current pattern on a similar weather day. Like, so many factors are going to go into how something moves down a body of water. So.
Yeah. But these smiley faces aren't even the same. They're different colors, different styles, which, okay, if it's a group of serial killers, then okay, that would explain it. But it's not an uncommon image. If it was like some like completely individual like graffiti tag or something that's never been seen anywhere else, then okay, that's
one thing. But yeah,
that to me would make it more, I'd maybe be like, it's more realistic. But
no, I mean, I bet if you did a survey of all the urban graffiti in, American cities, then
you'd be there a long time.
Well, yeah, but also I bet you that there are random smiley faces all over the damn place, because like, if I had a can of spray paint, and I have no artistic ability with spray paint, let me tell you, and I was told, go graffiti something and make it some sort of recognizable thing, I'm pretty sure I would graffiti a smiley face.
So, smiley faces aren't a rare form of graffiti.
No.
That is what leads me to question it. Because these guys aren't crackpots with tinfoil hats. They're experienced detectives. They're leaders in their area of expertise. And so I'm like, I kind of want to give it credence because they're clearly not idiots.
No, but I also think that it seems to me like they've fallen into the trap of like, we want to believe this, like, no matter what. And now it's become their thing. Like, who knows? It could have just started off as a sort of like random thing they were talking about, and then now they've become known for it, and they can stake their claim to it. So I don't know. It's tough.
But like what you were saying before about confirmation bias, I think now it's become that for them.
Yeah.
Like, they've spent more than 15 years on it now. They need it to be true.
Yeah, really. Otherwise, they're fucked.
But I do think, especially, like, obviously, of all the cases they've looked at, there will be some that will just be very kind of banal. There will be drownings.
Yeah.
But the ones that are included in the TV show are the ones that make me think there's something else there, because the decomposition rate doesn't match up to how long they've supposedly been in the water. But I don't believe that all 350 odd cases are going to be like that.
Yeah.
Also, 350, that would make them like the most prolific serial killer in American history.
Oh, yeah.
If not world
Which
history.
just doesn't seem likely.
And I don't know, the idea of like a gang of serial killers I find very strange as well.
It's pretty contradictory, because serial killers are usually individual by necessity, or like
or like couples,
or
Philiada, things like that.
Yeah, and like they're basically describing a pretty advanced type of like MO. If you think about it, like they're saying, okay, so they kidnap these kids after they're out for a night. They hold them for months, or, potentially like extended periods of time. They either torture them or don't. And then they release them, they kill them, they put them in the water X amount of, distance from where they were originally disappeared from. Like, it's not a simple, like, well, they murder people with a knife. Like, so for that to be a group of people doing that seems crazy.
I mean, if you were talking about like organized crime and a drug cartel,
yeah,
I would be more likely to believe
it.
If it was, people who had wronged them, who had stolen from them, whatever. They kidnap them, they kill them in this way, and they dump them in water.
Yeah.
And they leave a mark near the body.
Yeah.
That I would find more believable, but it just...
Well, and the fact that it's in so many different locations as well. It's just, how do you stay organized if you're this big serial killer gang across,
I mean, no online platform is secure, so we can't even like use Google Drive or something. Like, okay, so you're in Minnesota this week.
Yeah.
You're in Wisconsin. I'm going to Maine because we haven't done one in Maine yet. So
yeah.
It's like you say, how do you keep track of that?
It doesn't seem.
See, from the outset, it does sound like an interesting theory, but then the more you think about it, the more it's no.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like it's an appealing theory for true crime fans, because it's very it's kind of like a creepypasta come to life. Like like, oh, and they found the hook on the car door handle. Well, they found the smiley face next to the body, and it's like you wanna believe it because it's so outrageous, but also that sort of like extreme nature of it makes it just not that believable.
But yeah, so I think in some cases where it seems more like a body dump, or they have been put in the river a few days or whatever before they were found, there is foul play.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, let's say 350, they're not all like that, because if there was that many like that, someone else would have joined the dots up as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
That's the thing. Like, I think there's definitely some of these cases are not like accidental deaths or some of them are, you know, criminal in some way. But I don't think they're connected.
No. But one thing that I do find quite interesting about this theory is that there's a English or British theory quite similar to this one. And that is the Manchester pusher theory. So I'll be honest, the only reason I know about this is because my sister lives in Manchester. Hey, I know you're listening because you've got nothing better to do.
Oh.
Dude, nobody has anything better to do. And my mum was always terrified about her going out drinking in the city because it is filled with canals and rivers and just general open bodies of water.
Good.
And the theory goes that the pusher is an unknown serial killer who has pushed dozens of people into the city's canal or the River Medlock. You know, just lurks in the shadows for drunk victims. And this theory kind of died away for a while, and but it's gained a lot more sort of notoriety recently because in January, I think it was, there was the trial of Reynard Singer, who was accused and convicted, accused of drugging and raping 195 men who were on nights out in Manchester between 2015 and 2017. And I can't remember the number he was convicted of, but he's not seeing the outside world anytime soon.
I would think not.
And so was the pusher theory became kind of prominent again because people were like, oh, was it him? But it's completely different MO, completely different type of killer.
Yeah.
And he actually never killed any of his victims. He drugged them and raped them, but then they'd wake up in his house and he'd be like, oh yeah, you were drunk, so I looked after you. And Greater Manchester Police refute claims of a serial killer lurking around the canals at night. Similar to all the police departments involved in the Smiley Face cases. You know, they claim these drownings are accidental or as a result of, you know, people getting drunk, becoming separated from their friends and falling into the canals or the river. But the one thing they can't deny is that Manchester does have a large number of drowning deaths, like more than, you know, other cities of a similar size and with rivers and canals. Between 2008 and 2014, 85 people, 72 of them were men, died in rivers, canals and other waterways in Greater Manchester. And so, whilst I think there is more to the Smiley Face Killers case theory thing. Oh my god.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, the Smiley Face Killers theory, I don't believe there is a pusher, but it is interesting to see these kind of theories that develop when people want it to be something more. They don't want to believe that. Nobody wants to believe that their relatives were the ones who got drunk and fell into the river and drowned, because we all think those people are stupid. Whether we admit it or not, everyone has read about a drunk student getting into trouble in some way and thought, idiot.
Yeah. I mean...
And we don't want to believe our loved ones are that stupid.
Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, I think it's very human to, like, search for answers to the sort of randomly tragic, I guess. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's any other, like... I want to say that for a while, it was either right before I left New York or right after, but there were a lot of people getting pushed onto the subway tracks in front of
that freaks up.
Yeah, in front of oncoming trains and dying. And I think it was right before I left, but I really do remember sort of being like, oh, there's someone going around just killing people in the subway stations. And But again, is it just a random thing or is it an organized situation? I don't know. Yeah. I always stand with my back to the wall in a subway situation because of that. Yeah. So that is the Smiley Face Killer theory. Smiley Face Case Killer theory. Face case. Face.
That as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, let us know what you guys think. Are all of these 350 cases connected? Do you hate us for saying this is kind of bullshit? Like, what do you think? Are they?
Have we lost our minds?
Yeah. Are they just like tragic accidents? You know, we want to hear other people's theories and suppositions. So join our Facebook group, which is called Square Mile of Murder, the podcast. It's a private group. Come on, join in. We'll add you on, or find us on Instagram, and yeah, let us know what you think.
Just carrying on from last week's conversation about the Facebook group, have you got around to shaving your legs yet?
Yeah, I did. It was driving me crazy. They're getting so long, and like, I don't know, there's like a different feeling when water hits your legs when the hair is really long. Like, it feels like there's just like rivers running down my legs. So finally, the other day, I was just like, no, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. It's over. So I've been sheared.
Yeah. So, yeah, come and join the Facebook group and talk to us about literally anything. There is not much we won't talk about. Yeah. And if you want to go one step further and support the show, you can sign up to Patreon. And pledges start from just $1, which is about 80p.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to do our first shout out because we have some lovely people who have done that.
Yay!
So, thank you to Cavalcade of Shadows. No, Cavalcade of Shows. I don't even know anymore. J.R. McDaniel, Catherine Jones, Michael Giles, and the podcast Gremlin.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, you lovely people.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mom. And Mike for supporting us, and my dear lovely podcast Gremlin she just wooed in the background for letting me sign her up to our Patreon. So yeah, no, it's super cool. And like, I think more than anything, we want to just build a community of people around this thing. And, you know, we want your input. If you're listening and you like something, or if you're listening and you have thoughts or suggestions, like, let us know.
Yeah, come tell us. Come talk to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suggest cases.
Suggest.
Anyone suggests Jack the Ripper will be ignored.
Maybe I'll do a solo Patreon episode of Jack the Ripper.
I'm not doing it. I refuse.
Yeah, or like, you know, send us questions and
anything.
We're bored. Are you bored? We're bored. Come talk to us.
Yeah.
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 So
come and talk to us.
Thanks to our patrons, and thank you all for listening. And for our $10 plus patrons, we'll have a new full-length bonus episode on Patreon on Friday. And for everyone else, we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.